We are very grateful for your participation in this press conference. I do have some notes, and I'm going to make sure I stay on topic here. And so let me begin by sort of saying that it had always been our hope after the June 24th results that we would quickly be able to move into the general election. For Senator Cochran to continue to have a chance to talk to Mississippi voters throughout the state about issues that not only important to him, but more importantly, they're important to them. Jobs and the economy, fiscal issues that matter that are taking place in Washington, D.C. We've been very gracious to Senator McDaniel, his supporters in their efforts. Look, they ran a great campaign. Applaud them for what they did. They worked very hard. They ran a tough campaign. They gave it their all, and we applaud them for that. I think we've been very consistent since June the 3rd and then June the 24th of applauding them for the efforts that they had, and their supporters who obviously worked very hard and felt very dedicated to their candidate. But sadly, the time has come now that we can no longer sit silent. We can no longer sit still with all these baseless accusations that have been fed by the McDaniel campaign and their out-of-state allies. Sorry, that's okay. So, we sort of felt like it was a time for us to talk to you guys and talk to voters throughout the state who've paid such close attention to this. And Les, I want to say this, to be candid with you guys, and I think, both Jordan and I have always been very straightforward with you, never dodged an issue. But there will be some issues that you may want to talk today that we just won't be able to address because of counsel from our lawyers. We've had conversations with our lawyers over the past few days, and there will be a few issues that you may want to talk about that I may not be able to. When we came out of the primary, we knew that we didn't do a good enough job as a campaign with our GOTV efforts, that's get out the vote efforts, our ground game, our grassroots efforts, that we needed to get more voters to the polls who were supportive of Thad Cochran. That was our number one primary, our number one priority was GOTV. Bringing more people in, and we did this. We brought more staffers throughout the state, from the coast to DeSoto, from the Delta to the hills, who helped us knock on doors, make phone calls, go to the coffee shop, go to the barber shop, go to their Sunday school class, who were reaching out to people about Thad Cochran. We knew we had to make that a greater priority for our campaign. We followed the same playbook that the top GOP campaigns did, 03, 07, 08, 2011, and I was involved in some capacity in just about all those campaigns. We went back to sort of the basic GOTV, grassroots playbook that all those did. And I think obviously the results of the runoff election showing Senator Cochran as a winner by 2% or about 7,000 votes, proved that the efforts that we made with our ground game worked. We had thousands of Mississippians who voted for Thad on the 24th, who've always voted for Thad. And there was some number of them who just stayed home on the 3rd, and that was our fault. And what we did was we focused on getting those folks who had supported Senator Cochran in so many elections in the past back to the polls. So to sort of transition to what is the process now, we're all very, very familiar and very aware that state law allows for poll books to be reviewed, results to be challenged, etc. The sort of the normal procedures that many of you guys who've been covering politics for a long time have seen. And listen, if the McDaniel campaign wants to go look at a poll book at a precinct or look at every poll book in the state, or if they want to challenge this election, we don't have any problems with that. We're happy to continue meeting them in courthouses throughout the state to review data. But however, I just think it's sort of the time has come now for the McDaniel campaign to put up or shut up. If there's something that's out there, let's talk about it. Let's look through this. If they've got hard evidence, bring it forward. But quit talking about exaggerated numbers that they know were not true, and we know we're not true, and you guys know we're not true. I just think that's sort of the time has come to put up or shut up. When I hear some of their rhetoric, it's frustrating, to be candid with you. It's frustrating to everybody who's been a part of this process because it's wrong, it's baseless, and quite frankly, it's just inaccurate. I was myself involved working with Bill Billingsley, who was the representative for the McDaniel campaign at the Hinds County Courthouse, pretty much Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, specifically Thursday and Friday of last week. Bill was professional, He did a great job of representing their campaign, working with us as we were there to witness what they were doing, looking through poll books. And I couldn't applaud him more for the way that he handled his business. I very much disagreed with what his results were at the end of the day. And I got a few examples that I think sort of sum up this. When you look at the Fondren Presbyterian Church, and some of you have heard me mention this before, that's precinct 14 here in Hinds County. The McDaniel campaign said there was somewhere north of 190 or so votes that they claimed some type of issue with. That's 190 votes that they added on to this ever-increasing number that they talked to you guys about. Well, what they're saying is that's 190 people who voted in the Democrat primary who then were allowed for some reason to vote in the Republican runoff. Well, if that were true, we're talking about precinct 14, if you had 190 votes that they had issues with, there would have had to have been 190 people at least who voted in the Democrat primary. When I went back and I looked at the numbers, there were only around 25 voters who participated in the Democrat primary. That doesn't make any sense to me. Their numbers, again, are just proven to be wrong. Another example is right up the street from here, the Eastover box, precinct 34. They claimed somewhere north of 130 or so votes in the Eastover precinct that they had issues with. Again, if there were 130 votes that they had issues with, that were people who were allowed to vote in the Democrat primary and the Republican runoff, you would have had at least 130 people who voted in the Democrat primary. There are only about 35 or so. So again, baseless, inaccurate, false. These are facts that I'm laying out for you here. So look, what I think is very likely to have happened is you would have had some mistakes. We've all been a part of elections. I worked on as a poll watcher and a poll worker in campaigns. These poll workers, they work their tail off. They work 14 hours a day. They get paid less than $10 an hour. They sort of feel like it's their civic duty. Of course they're going to make some clerical errors. Of course there's going to be an issue here or there. But I can promise you it's way less than 1% total, way less. And I just think that point has not been pointed out. Rumors started flying yesterday. Hold on one second, please. Rumors started flying yesterday about a man named Stevie Filter. His name? Stevie Filter of Meridian. Stevie Filter was one of dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers that we paid to come help us with our Get Out the Vote efforts. As I mentioned to you earlier, we knew we needed to make our Get Out the Vote efforts, our ground game, our grassroots much deeper, much stronger throughout the state. We went back and we looked at our receipts. We keep a receipt for everybody that we pay because we have to have their name, their address, and how much we pay them for our FEC reports. As you know, we do things by the books around here. We paid this man $300, okay? We quickly determined, our folks who were working with him quickly determined he was not fulfilling his commitment to the campaign, and we cut ties with him. We have a policy around here that if you don't do what you said you're going to do for Senator Cochran, if you try to embarrass Senator Cochran, if you're not doing, we'll replace you. You're gone. We're not going to put up with that. And I think this is obviously why he has tried to get this campaign to discredit our campaign. There's somebody named Charles Johnson, who I've never met in my life. He is an out-of-state quasi-blogger who is admitted to the world via his Twitter account. And in this story that he wrote that came out last night, is that right? That came out last night, that he bought and paid for Mr. Filter's information for this story. Bought and paid. This out-of-state quasi-blogger is the same guy, go look at his Twitter account, who is accused, elected officials here in Mississippi of some of the most unspeakable things. He has put out a bounty, a reward of $1,000 for pictures that were taken at St. Catherine's Village. Vile, disgusting things. Look, I know most of you guys in this room, and I know none of you would ever pay somebody for their story. You would never do that. That's not the way. It's not the way you handle your business, particularly with someone who has this sort of a sad reputation as Mr. Filter had in his community. Club for Growth and the Senate Conservative Fund were two of the larger donors, supporters from out of state for Senator McDaniel. They conceded to Senator Cochran either election night or early the following morning. Hey, they believed in their candidate. They believed in Senator McDaniel, and I applaud them for that. But they quickly understood the election was and is over, and they moved on to the next race that they deemed important. And when they left this race, their financial support with them. And in saying that, it's no surprise that with all the noise that we see coming out of the McDaniel campaign, it's typically quickly followed by a fundraising request. We're moving forward in this general election. Senator Cochran and the campaign are focused on running a hard-fought, successful general election campaign so that Thad Cochran can win in November. He will be on the campaign trail ASAP. He will continue talking to voters and supporters about issues that matter to him and matter to them. And I'm happy to take some questions, Scott, if you want to go first.
The McDaniel campaign is putting out a flyer, as of today, an email flyer, asking for campaign donations basically to fund their legal fight and referring to the election as a sham. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I had seen this flyer, but as you know, I did mention that typically when they're saying stuff about the results of the election or the election itself, it's quickly followed by a fundraising request. That's their business. I don't know anything about it. But I can tell you, Scott, it's insulting to the hundreds of thousands of voters in Mississippi for them to say this election is a sham or this election was stolen, because they know better than that.
Do you guys plan to consider any legal action against those people who make claims against the campaign?
We are talking with our lawyers. We've been in conversation with our lawyers over the past few days and continue to, and we're going to explore all options.
Is a lawsuit possible?
We are exploring all options.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
We've had some updated numbers from the McDaniel campaign saying they're over 4,900 votes now, and they are questionable votes where they say they believe that these are ineligible crossover votes. And I think you sort of acknowledged yesterday there may be possibly a couple of hundred here in Hinds County alone.
Yeah, Ross, I mean, I think that and I appreciate your question. The McDaniel campaign will do and say anything for him to win this race. If they need to take that number to 100,000, they'll do it. But let me tell you, we have worked beside the circuit clerks in this state, the county chairman in this state. We know what's out there. There is no deliberate efforts by anyone to do anything negligent or illegal with the way this campaign, the way this election was put on. There are going to be a small number of clerical errors that were made by poll workers, hardworking people. But the McDaniel campaign knows that we're talking about maybe a few hundred votes total statewide. I mean, we're getting reports as our folks are out there in different courthouses of 5 votes in this county, 2 votes in this county. Obviously, Hinds County, you had 25, 26, 27,000 people who voted. And I think there may be a couple hundred or so, but less than 1% total.
But isn't that troubling?
Is what troubling?
The fact that you have 300 votes that may have to be thrown out.
I don't think that that's troubling when you have less than 1% error. Go talk to IBM. I guarantee they got probably more than 1% of the computers that have malfunctions.
Yeah, but we're not talking about IBM, we're talking about a
We sure are. That's exactly right. So again, I think the poll workers who put on these elections did a fantastic job. You will have an error now and then. I think there's no question about that. But for the McDaniel campaign to try to keep feeding their base, keep feeding the story, keep it alive, I think is absurd with the numbers that they're put out. And I think that I gave you great examples here in Hinds County, Precinct 14, Precinct 34, and I know that there are others that just completely disprove anything that they say, anything.
Is it possible this whole legal fight, though, could hinder the election process, or do you think it could be resolved before we get to a fall election?
Well, what legal fight do you mean?
The lawsuit that was filed by True the Vote.
Sure. That lawsuit involves the Secretary of State and the Mississippi Republican Party. We are not a part of that lawsuit, so you have to talk to them.
Austin, I know that I guess it was last Friday, you did talk about what this can do in terms of moving forward to November, any hindrance that it could have in reaching out to those McDaniel supporters that maybe are frustrated at this point. The fact that he's continuing on with discussions of donate to this, we may legally challenge, is it frustrating to you guys trying to talk to those voters?
I think it's, and great question, Courtney. I think it's frustrating to Mississippians in general. They're ready to move past this. They know Thad Cochran won the runoff election. They know he won it by more than 7,000 votes, 2% of the election. They're ready to move on. They're ready to start talking about, you know, what's Thad Cochran going to do to help improve the economy, what's Thad Cochran going to do to create more and better jobs. I think that's who it's frustrating to, with the voters throughout Mississippi.
You said Senator Cochran will be hitting the campaign trail ASAP.
ASAP.
Why is he not here today?
Why is he not here today? Senator Cochran is back en route to Washington, D.C. to continue his service as a U.S. Senator. So are there any other questions? Or
You say ASAP, like next week?
Well, I mean, look, we got to figure out what the schedule is going to be, but absolutely very, very soon. So.
Will the talk of legal challenges at all hinder that?
Hinder what?
Or will that delay that in any way?
Absolutely. No, he's got, look, we've got a general election that we've got to run. He's ready to start talking to voters again. No, it's not going to hinder that at all. Anything else? We through. Thank you all for being here. Greatly appreciate it.